everybody, I'm Steve Towns. I'm Deputy Chief Content Officer for Government Technology. Welcome to our Q&A with Jim Helou from Amazon Web Services. Jim is Worldwide Business Development Leader for Public Sector for AWS Marketplace. Before that, he was Head of US Public Sector Channels for Google Cloud. In all, he's spent about 30 years in the technology industry. So, Jim, great to have you with us today.
Steve, thanks so much for the time. Looking forward to when we can do these things in person again.
Yeah. Feels like we're getting closer, right?
I think so.
So, Jim, one big impact, I think, of the pandemic over the last couple of years was really to increase interest or break down resistance to cloud in public sector. Given your experience with some of the premier cloud providers in the industry, I'm really interested in your thoughts around where this technology is headed and maybe what it means for states and localities, particularly around this concept of marketplaces. And maybe that's a good place to start. Do you want to talk about what AWS Marketplace is to begin with, and then we'll kind of jump into some of the benefits that they'll see out of these?
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting and timely. I just got an email the other day announcing the 10-year anniversary of the AWS Marketplace. Now, I joined AWS 2 years ago, and when I looked at the opportunity, I looked at it as kind of an emerging business and kind of new. But lo and behold, it's been around for 10 years. And if you have a chance, there's a really cool blog that was put out by Jeff Barr in 2012. So that's when AWS Marketplace was launched. So it's been around for a while. You'll see in Jeff's blog post, he talked about we had 3 categories at the time, and I wrote them down: software infrastructure, development tools, and business software. So you fast forward to today, We've got 60 categories. We've got 2,000 ISVs and over 12,000 products in AWS Marketplace. So it's been quite a journey, but it is still very much, what we say in AWS, it's still day one. It's still very early from an adoption standpoint.
Okay, so I mean, the offerings in there are well established, and like you just said, there's a ton of them. Talk about the benefit of this model for customers, particularly state and local government customers. What can this do for you?
So if you take a look at our states, our big cities and counties and localities, our sheriff's departments, many of them, if not all, are really pushing hard to migrate some of their most active opportunities and applications from their on-prem data centers into cloud. And they're doing that for a variety of different reasons. Some are cost, some are speed, some are enabling citizen access a little bit easier. So there's a variety of different reasons why they're moving. And when we put AWS Marketplace in the middle of perhaps helping them to smooth that transition, we do a couple of things. So if you have the opportunity, you go to, you look up AWS Marketplace and you get to this really nice landing page, and it gives you the opportunity to just research. So if you're an IT director, if you're in procurement and you're trying to figure out, hey, is Marketplace the right thing for me to do? You usually start with the mission that you're working on. Do I have access to the tools and products I need to migrate my data and applications into the cloud? And with the deep catalog that we have, the answer is typically yes. The other thing that the procurement folks really like, and we've heard this again and again, is when you look at the typical timeline and steps that a procurement officer has to go through to research and buy and provision software, it's a fairly challenging task. And it's probably one of the more challenging tasks in public sector. And with Marketplace, we have been testing and kind of getting very valid feedback that we're condensing that process by almost 50% of the time, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah. I mean, when you get right down to it, that procurement process is often one of the harder parts of this, right? So this can help smooth that out.
Yeah. And one of the examples that I really like to talk about a lot. So ransomware and endpoint security. I mean, security is one of our most popular categories, and we wish it wasn't, because there's so many terrible things that are happening. But we're thankful that we have the opportunity to help. So when you're a procurement official trying to help your CIO or your CISO, your goal is to get that software up and running as quickly as possible.
Right.
So if we can help in that process in a small way of just getting hands-on and getting it running in the AWS infrastructure sooner, 50% condensed time frame is a really meaningful time.
Yeah, that's a big savings. Jim, you mentioned, a couple of the types of solutions that are available on Marketplace, but talk about what you're going to find there, kind of in categories of solutions.
It's vast. So, from the early days of 3 now up to 60, I've lost track of the number of category managers that are just under the security side of it. There's the endpoint security. There's all different aspects now. We've got a very deep catalog of business applications, reporting capabilities, migration tools. We've recently announced professional services. Because if you think about it, if you're an IT director or you're trying to solve a mission, the first thing you want to make sure is you've got the infrastructure. And our AWS field teams do an amazing job there. The next thing you do is you start bringing in the business applications that sit on top of that infrastructure. But our states and cities and counties don't always have the depth of technical bench to integrate all those pieces. So allowing professional services to be procured through Marketplace with the product also helps things getting up and running a little bit faster and getting to that mission solved quicker.
Okay. So you mentioned, the Marketplace has been around longer than we might think. Talk about who's using it now.
So in AWS, our public sector is a pretty broad group of organizations that range from national security, DoD, federal, nonprofit healthcare, and the cities, counties, states, and localities. So we've got folks using across that broad spectrum. There's a great use case that we have in Kansas City where they're using some smart city technology. So Kansas City is trying to improve roads, bridges, and tunnels and kind of that Department of Transportation. And there's a really nice tool that they procured through Marketplace to help them achieve that mission. Another one that I really like for those Notre Dame fans, go Fighting Irish, they are using one of our products for a backup and recovery tool because particularly in peak times when school starts and during some of those really high access times into the systems, they want to make sure that God forbid anything happens, they have the ability to reserve that data and back up quickly if they need to.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's pretty likely you'll find what you need once you take a look in there.
Indeed. And the other thing that's interesting is, like I mentioned 2 years ago, and our justice and public safety team came to me and said, Jim, we love Marketplace. I'm like, all right, this is good, but you don't have any of the products we need. I'm like, oh, that's bad. So I said, tell me more about what's going on. Like, well, our sheriffs and our deputies, they have very specific software tools that they use in their line of work that Marketplace doesn't have. So, well, do you have a list of those tools? And they provided us a list of the top 10 tools. We got them in the hands of our category leads. And lo and behold, less than about 6 to 8 weeks later, we started listing some of those products in Marketplace to help solve some of those missions. So just because you may not find it in there today doesn't mean that we can't add it and help you get access to what you need to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that it's going to keep evolving really based on what your customers are asking for.
Exactly.
So Jim, you pointed to a few examples of why we might want to buy through Marketplace versus direct. But talk a little bit more about that. What are you going to see through this model versus buying directly?
So if you get back to the challenge that our public sector procurement teams have and our IT directors, they run a vast organization with a variety of different products. So the day in a life of one of those individuals spans across, you think about our catalog, they're touching products across that entire catalog. So if you start at the beginning of the journey, they've got to go procure, which means they got to pick up the phone and enter into procurement discussion with each of these individual ISVs and service providers, which takes up a tremendous amount of time. So what we try to do is centralize that through a single pane of glass where they can find the tools they're looking for, they can buy them, and they can provision them across their infrastructure, and then manage that back end from an invoice and billing standpoint. So really trying to condense and simplify how they can buy and manage those tools long term. And we're starting to make some good progress there.
So Jim, kind of specifically, how are you seeing states and localities use Marketplace?
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve. We're starting to see this increase attention around what people are calling private marketplaces, and they've kind of come up with this term on their own. We've been doing a lot of business across states and cities and counties, for many years, and they've been individual transactions. We have this thing called a private offer, which allows them to get pre-negotiated pricing and a pre-negotiated end user terms of service together, and that's kind of simplifies the procurement of a single process. But a lot of the state procurement offices now are starting to scratch their head going, hey, we like that motion. Marketplace, you've got the catalog. Can I grab a subset of that catalog and bring it into behind my firewalls and allow my users to get access to just those products that we want with the proper IAM tools wrapped around that? And that's kind of directionally where people are going. So they have the level of control, but also freeing up people to buy the things that are approved in a simplistic way. So that private marketplace motion is one that we're starting to see a lot of momentum. In fact, we were on the phone this morning with a major research university in Massachusetts about that exact thing. We had their entire asset management team on.
So Jim, that's really interesting. So this is really kind of how cloud procurement matures, right? I mean, it gets easier, faster, more flexible. Yeah, you have more control over it.
Exactly. Yeah, we get out of the kind of onesie twosie transactions, and now we kind of set up this internal store, and they've got visions of branding it with the state logo, and really we just become an API input on the back end that provides them the tools that they need in an environment that they're familiar with.
Maybe my last question is really around the reseller community. I know our public sector really relies on those resellers for help. How does something like Marketplace fit in with that model?
Originally, the short answer is it wasn't built for them. So when you go back to Jeff's, you hit his blog post, our view back then was, hey, we're going to simplify to the point of let's just get those direct handshakes going. But the reality is in public sector, that reseller community is a trusted advisor, and they are so tightly aligned to mission that we had to change our strategy. And a lot of what I've been doing over the past couple of years is really starting with our customer and working backwards. So how do our customers like to buy? Some of them do like to buy direct, but many of them rely on the systems integrators community. They rely on distributors and aggregators and resellers, service disabled veterans, 8As. So there's this vast community of folks who are trusted partners to public sector that we have been working to enable, so that as public sector comes to them and says, hey, Carasoft, we need to procure through you, or hey, General Dynamics, we need to procure through you, we've got existing relationships there. They understand how to transact through Marketplace, and they're incented to do so.
So you can really, you have the flexibility to buy the way that's going to work best for you, and use those existing relationships and expertise probably that have built up over years, but still get a streamlined procurement experience and get the benefits out of that Marketplace that it can offer.
Exactly. A great example of this is you look at the Veterans Administration. They awarded a cloud contract to a service disabled veteran firm by the name of 4 Points. So 4 Points owns their cloud contract along with all of the third-party tools that run through there. So as the VA is innovating and bringing in really important tools to improve that mission and take care of the veterans that we've committed to take care of, 4 Points has come to Marketplace to say, we need to plug you into this process to simplify how we get access to tools to speed the mission for our customer. So we're kind of joining hands with trusted partners like them to solve these missions, because their value is in winning these big contracts and bringing kind of that service around all of the infrastructure and third party. And we're just a feed into that to help them to have access to the products they need to.
Yeah, and kind of get the best of both worlds out to that customer.
Exactly.
Well, Jim, really good stuff. Really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. Thanks again for chatting with us.
Thanks so much. It's great chatting with you. And again, look forward when we can do this together in person.